A very warm welcome to the seventh recitation, which is event-driven programming. Before we start, I would like to remind everyone to watch the previous recitation videos if you haven't, and fill the Google form so as to be marked for attendance. The videos are uploaded every Thursday, and you have a week's time from the time it is uploaded to watch the video and also fill out the form. Moreover, be sure to write the honor code statements when you are submitting your assignments, otherwise they won't be graded. And lastly, you can find all the PowerPoint presentations along with any additional files on Canvas. If you go under the Files tab, under Recitation Information, under my name, Jayashree Damala, you can find all the recitation folders. So today's recitation, we will be using JavaScript to practice event-driven programming. But before we move ahead, let's try to understand what event-driven programming is exactly. It is a programming paradigm or a model in which the flow of program execution is determined by events. So when I say events, I can say, for example, a user action such as a mouse click or a key press or a message from the operating system or another program. So an event-driven application is designed so as to detect these events as and when they occur, and then deal with them using appropriate event handling procedures. So JavaScript in the browser uses an event-driven programming model, and all of this starts by following an event. So we are going to take up a problem statement, and while we solve the problem statement, we are going to implement the event-driven programming using JavaScript. So the initial template for the HTML file is shown in the image. So you can either type it down and then save the file, or you can also go to Canvas under Files, Recitation Information. Under my name, you can find the Recitation 7 folder where you can get the template. Just download it from there, and you can just add on your code in the file. So let's see what the problem statement is. It says that Parallax Motors has closed their 2020 fiscal year and they want to calculate the total sales for 2020 and the expected sales for 2021 by using an HTML form. The HTML form should be as given in the image, which is on the left hand side. Note that the calculate total represents a button, and the form has other different elements like text boxes, buttons, and radio buttons. So we will have to create an HTML template which looks exactly like it is in the image. So you have the usual headings and text, but here we are going to create an HTML form. So you can see that the Eastern Division and the Western Division has text box as input. So you're going to have a text box which takes in an input which could be anything, numbers or letters, and then you have a button which says calculate 2020 total. So essentially what this button will do is it will take the input from Eastern Division and the Western Division. Okay, it will take some number input, and it's going to when the button is pressed, the input values are added together, and then it will be displayed in the text box which is next to the 2020 total sales. So that is how the 2020 total is going to be calculated. Then you have to estimate the sales for the next year, which is 2021. So there are two radio buttons used over here. One is for the high and one is for the low. So it will give you a range of what the max expected sales could be and what the minimum expected sales could be. So whenever you click on either of the radio buttons, the output is going to be shown in the text box which is next to 2021 expected sales. So that is what we have to do first. First we'll try and create the HTML form. Also you can also go to, there is another toolkit which has a PDF, like a toolkit PDF, which has been uploaded on Canvas. It looks something like this, and it has the syntax to create text box, buttons, and radio buttons. So this could be quite handy while we code. So I would request everyone to open this up also. And while I code, you all can code along with me and take help of this toolkit to create the elements of the HTML form. So let's just go through all the requirements of the form. The first is that the sales for the Eastern and Western divisions will be entered manually by the sales manager. So like we saw, we need to create the text boxes, and the syntax for this is going to be input type equal to text. Then the next thing is the total sales for the year should be displayed by clicking on the calculate total button. And the syntax to create a button is you write the button tag, and then you can write inside of it the text that you want the button to display. So it could be calculate total, or it could be calculate 2020 total sales. There is another way of creating a button in an HTML form. You can just write input type equal to button, so that will also create the button. Then we have the radio boxes. So we know that there are two radio boxes. One is high radio box and the other is low radio box. The radio box for the element high means it's the expected sales increase of 30% for 2021, and low means it means expected sales increase of 10% for 2021. Now, after we click on either of the radio boxes, there will be an output which will again be shown in the text box, which is named as 2021 expected sales. So this is calculated and displayed when the sales manager selects one of the radio boxes. And again, the syntax to create a radio button or a radio box is input type equal to radio. So these are how you can create the elements of the form. Now, apart from that, the styling also needs to be done. So you can style it to make the background yellow, or you just do any color of your choice, that's okay. And so the syntax to change the background color would be inside, you have the head section. Inside the head section, you can create a style section, and inside the style section, you can write body inside curly brackets, background hyphen color is yellow, or the color of your choice. So that can be done. So let's do one thing. Let's try and create the template first, and then we can move on to the other stuff. I would encourage everyone to code along with me, because this way you can understand it better. So if you go to Canvas, you can see this template file which is already there. We can just start adding a code to this and create the parallax motors template like we want. So over here already the title is given as parallax motors, and we have the head tag and the body tag. So first let's just do the styling of it. Let's write style. Okay, inside of style, like I said, we need to change the background color to yellow. So I'm going to write body and then background color as yellow. Okay. So now if we go and check, I'm sure it's changed to yellow. Then that is done. Now we can go to the body and we can start writing our headings. So first is going to be H1, where we can write parallax motors, or then we'll have the other tag, which is the H2 tag, and it says sales in millions. So we have the H1 tag and the H2 tag. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to get the inputs for the Eastern division and the Western division. So let's just write that. We can just write first Eastern division. We know that we need to have a text box over here, and like mentioned before, the syntax for a text box is we have to write input and type is equal to text. So let's just write that. We'll write input type equal to Now, when you're taking the inputs, remember that you need to assign an ID also to it. Okay, so this ID will help later when we want to do the calculations and display the output. So let's just write the ID, and I will just give the ID name Easton, and then we can close the tab. Then we have to do the same thing for the Western division also. So I write Western division, and then inside of it, the input type equal to text, and we will also give it an ID. I will give it an ID Western. So with this, we have created our two text boxes. Let's go and check it out. So yes, you can see we have two text. We have the heading, then we have the two text boxes, one for Eastern Division and the other for the Western Division. I hope you guys also have these two made now. Now let's go to the next step, which is creating a button. So we will create a button over here. We can have a p tag, and inside that we can have a button tag. So again, the button, we will give an ID to the button also. So whenever the button is clicked, we know what ID we have to refer to and what we have to what value we have to display. So let's give it an ID, and I will give it an ID total sales. Okay, and the text that should be displayed on the button, we can write anything. So I'm just gonna write calculate total, and then the button has been created. So let's go and check, and you can see the button has been created. There is another way to create a button. So I will show that method also. What you can do is you can have a p tag. Inside that you can just write input type is equal to button, and then give it an ID total sales. Okay. Total sales, and then yeah, you can mention, so whatever text you want to mention on the button, for that you can use the value keyword and write calculate 2020 total. So now let's just go and see how this looks, and you can see now we have a second button also. So there are two ways to create the button. One is this and the other is this. But let's just remove one of these because we don't need it. So you can just comment it out. To comment, you have to use an angular bracket, then an exclamation, hyphen, hyphen, and then you have to end it with hyphen, hyphen, and close angular bracket. So this is how you can comment. And if you go, you can see now we have just one button. Then now we have created both the text boxes and we have created the button also. Now we need to create the radio buttons. So let's go ahead and do that. But before that, once the sales is calculated, we need to display it also. So let's just write a code to display that. That p tag, then 2020 total sales, and you can write input The type is going to be text, and you write an ID and give it an ID equal to sales 2020, and that's it. So now if we check, now whenever we input anything in these two text boxes and click on the calculate button, the result is going to be displayed here. Now we can go and make the radio buttons for the estimate. So we can write estimate for 2021, and then we can have two radio buttons. So input is going to be, type is going to be radio. We can name it, so we are going to name it estimate and also give it IDs. So this is for the high, so we just give it high. Okay. We need another radio button which is for the low, so we can write input radio, and now the name is going to be estimate again. So let me explain why it is important that the names of the radio buttons have to be the same. So what happens is when you have two radio buttons, high and low, so when the high is clicked, like if the high is selected, the low has to be deselected. Or if the low is deselected, the low is selected, then the high has to be deselected. So the code will understand only if the names are the same. So when you give both the radio buttons the same name estimate, so it knows that if high is clicked, then the other has to be deselected. So this is very important, that whenever you're creating radio buttons, you need to have the same names. So you have the name as estimate and the ID as low. Let's just save it, and if we go to our code, you can see if I select high, the low is not selected, and if I select low, this automatically gets deselected. So this happens because we have given the same names to the radio buttons. So whenever you create radio buttons, just check that the names are the same, and when you select one, the other gets deselected. Now the radio buttons are created. The next thing that we will have to do is we have to display the estimated sales. So again, we'll write a p tag 2021 expected sales, and then an input, oops, and then an input tag which will have text. Then we will give it an ID, sales 2021, and now if we go and check our code, we have a text box also where the expected sales is going to be displayed. So with this, I think we have created the template exactly how it was asked by us. Now let's just go to this. So yeah, we have to take a note of two important things. First, that the ID entry should have meaningful names, and second, that the name entries in the radio button sections are the same. Okay, so while we were writing the code, we observed that every input and output was given IDs, and we made sure that those IDs have meaningful names. That is, if we're talking about this Eastern division, we have made sure that the ID is Eastern, so we can, so when we look at the ID, we know we're talking about the sales in the Eastern division. We know that when we talk about the ID as Western, we are talking about the Western division. So we made sure that the IDs are meaningful. And the second thing was that the names are same for both the radio buttons. And I have explained why this is important. It is because when one is clicked, the other will be unclicked, like unselected, because that's how radio buttons will work together. So in case if you haven't done these two things, make sure you go back to your code and make the necessary changes. So now we will come to the actual problem, which is to calculate the 2020 total sales. Now the place to enter the code is on the on-click section of the calculate total button. So over here in the code, we have created buttons. Now I will introduce you to one another keyword which is called as on click. What happens is basically when you click on a button, you want it to do some follow some statements and get the answer, right? So that will happen when we write the code inside the uh, on click keyword value. So we are gonna go do that. So the first thing is we have to find the addition of the Eastern Division and the Western Division sales. That's how we will get the total. So what we are going to do is the code is written over here. We will have a variable which is total underscore 2020. What we're going to do is the Eastern Division has an ID Eastern and the Western Division has the ID Western. So we are going to add both the values, that is number Eastern dot value plus number Western dot value, and then eventually we will give this total underscore 2020 to sales 2020 dot value, where sales 2020, as you can see, is the ID for the total say the output where the total sales is going to be displayed. Now let's break it down and understand exactly what is happening over here. The first statement over here adds up the numbers entered on the Eastern and the Western text boxes. So the IDs of those boxes is used to access their values. So whenever you want to access a particular value, you will take the ID and you can say ID dot the value. So that's why when we want to get the value of the Eastern Division, we write the ID of Eastern Division, which is Eastern dot value. This is how we can get the value. Then, so that is what we've done in the first sentence. We have taken both the values and we have added them. Then the next statement basically just assigns the total calculate value to the calculated to the value property of the total sales for 2020 text box. So what it essentially does is it pushes the result onto the 2020 sales box. So if you can see, once we enter the Eastern Division and the Western Division and we added, okay, we will enter both the values and we will click on the calculate 2020 button. So what is going to happen in the background is these two values are going to get added, okay, and it will be pushed onto this text box. And how it is exactly pushed onto the text box is this text box also has an ID. So we will say the ID dot value of this text box will take the addition of these two values. So this is what is going to happen. And one more thing, this is just a side note. JavaScript comments, like when we were earlier working, we added comments by writing like this, the angular bracket exclamation hyphen hyphen. Okay, so that is one way of writing the comments, but you can also write JavaScript comments by using two forward slashes. So I will show you when I code how to do that. And so this was the button for calculating the total sales of 2020. The similar thing can be used for radio buttons also. And I will just like the general formula for calculating the increase is mentioned as increased value is equal to original value into 1 plus increase. So this you can use to try and code it out for the radio buttons also. But first, we will go back to our code and we will try writing the onClick function for the first button. What I would say is you can try to code this along with me. And then for the radio buttons, pause the video and then code for the radio buttons and then come back and check if what you've written is right. So here we have the radio button where the input type is given. I will just, yeah. So this is the button we will have to code for. We already have the type which says button, the ID, total sales, and the value is calculate 2020 value. Now the next keyword that we need to add is the on click. So this basically what it says is whenever the button is clicked, what action has to be performed. So this is what we are going to type. So let's just get started with this. Like we said, we are going to create a variable total underscore 2020, and then we will add the values. So we will do number eastern dot value plus number western dot value. Now note that the number function is used below to ensure that the sales data that is entered by the user in the text boxes is treated as numbers. Okay, so let's just write a comment. So this way you'll understand how to write comments, JavaScript comments also. So it's just double slash. Okay, let me just write number is used to ensure that the data entered by the user user is treated as a number. Okay, so this is how you can write the comments also. So yeah, we were here. Don't forget the semicolon, very important. So we have created the variable total underscore 2020. Now you can see that the output has to be displayed over here and it has the ID sales underscore 20. So now this sales underscore 2020 is going to take the value of total underscore 2020. So you have total underscore 2020. And don't forget the semicolon, and we can save this. Now let's go to our code and we'll add the two values here and click on the calculate button. But we see that no output is generated. So I think we have done some mistake in the code. Let's just go back and see what it is. Okay, so the ID is sales 2020 and not sales underscore. So that's where I made a mistake. So I'm just going to correct that. And let's go back and refresh the page. Let's try to input the values and we can see that the output over here will be 12 plus 12, which is 24, and that is successfully displayed on the screen. Now this is what we've done for calculating the total sales. Now the next part is we have to write the code for the radio buttons. What I would say is just pause the video over here and try to code it out on your own. Then come back and look for any improvements that you could do. And if you can't do it, like how to do it. But I would say just try it on your own once first. So I'm going to go ahead and code it out for the radio buttons now. So the first thing that we have is the radio button for high. Now over here also again we will have an on click value. So I can just write on click equal to, yeah. So first what we'll do is we'll create a variable to hold the high percentage increase. Okay, so we'll have variable high underscore increase is equal to 0.30 because we said it's 30%. and then we can create another variable for the high sales. Okay, just making sure the spellings are right. The high sales. So what it's going to be is whatever total that we have got, which is the sales 2020 dot value. Okay, that will be the total. That's the total sales that we got. So we can write sales 2020 dot value into 1 plus the high underscore increase, right? That is going to be the high sales. But now this we have to display on the text box, which has the ID sales 2021. So we can write sales 2021 dot value equal to high underscore sales dot. So just to make sure that we have like the number of digits that are displayed, we can use the toFixed function and we can just write 2 inside of it. So basically there will be 2 digits that will be displayed after the decimal point. This is an optional thing if you want to do. It's okay if you don't do it, but this will make the output look more prettier. So this is what we've done for high. The similar thing has to be done for low. You can just write on click. And again, we'll create a variable for the low increase, which is 10%. So it will be 0.10. Then the next thing we have to do is create another variable for finding out the low sales, which is sales 2020 dot value into 1 plus the low increase, and we put the semicolon. And then finally we need to push the output to the text box. So we will write sales 2021 dot value. We'll get the low underscore sales dot, because we want to show only 2 numbers after the decimal point, we can just write toFixed and then save this. So now we can go and check our code. Let me just write 12. So we have calculated the total like done before. Now let's click on high and we can see we get the expected sales for that. If we click on row, we accordingly get expected sales. So that's how you can code it out for the text boxes and the radio buttons. All you have to keep in mind is that the buttons will have an on-click function inside of that, which inside of that where we will mention the steps that have to be taken. Also, one more thing, all these text boxes, if you can see, has this on change. I have added the on change word on it. So this can also be added when you can give a set of statements that should be done when the text input is changed. Wire it right now. So we've just left it blank. This is just an extra information I thought that I could just share. So let's go back to our PPT, and we have calculated the sales and the estimates also. This is the Google form link for the recitation. Make sure you complete it before the deadline. Thank you and have a good day, and I will meet you in the next recitation.